Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. I was out at a good restaurant the other night and I had a familiar experience. I knew what I wanted to eat, but no clue about wine. I prefer Pinot Noir, but the plenitude of choices is baffling. So I said to myself, time to call the maven. And luckily, he answered. Kevin Zraly has been a wine educator for more than 40 years. He's the author of the Windows on the World wine course, still a bestseller after all these years, the best-selling wine book of all times, in fact. He holds a James Beard Lifetime Achievement Award and these days runs a wine club and teaches master classes at Sherry Lehman. His latest book is Red Wine, a guide to 50 essential varieties. Kevin Zraly, here to demystify wine. Next. I am so delighted to have Kevin Zraly with us on the program, and we should have a good big feast here to go with this, all this, what I think will be delicious talk about wine.
I should have brought wine. I really should have brought wine, and I apologize.
You don't have to apologize.
Next time I'm going to double up on it.
Okay. Well, we'll have you back next week.
Okay. Tomorrow. It's holidays.
Before we talk about wine, let me talk about you a little bit. What kind of person does what you do? How did you get into this? What kind of person devotes his life to writing about studying wine?
I started early, and this might sound like a joke, but it's not. I started as an altar boy. Okay.
Really?
Father Matarazzo is still one of my great friends, retired priest. But I always remember that being an altar boy in the church and the wine.
But
and
that
the history.
wine was so awful.
I drank it anyhow. And of course, I said, what do I do with the wine? He said, well, you have to throw it out. I said, it's blessed. I'm not going to sacred. I'm not going to throw it out. So I drank it. And the whole thing of history and religion and wine always fascinated me. But I was 19 years old, lost at Woodstock, the festival. And I finally found a place upstate, and there was a restaurant. And I started working in this restaurant, and Craig Claiborne, who was the restaurant critic for the New York Times, came with another chef called Pierre Franet, and also Jacques Pepin. And they gave the restaurant in the middle of nowhere, literally in High Falls, New York, 400 people in that town. They gave it a 4-star rating.
I think the name of it.
Dupuis.
Yes.
The Dupuis Canal House Tavern. It was a 1797 stone building, and it had just opened. The chef, I was 19, so the chef and owner was maybe 28. I had no idea who these people were. All I know is that we went from 10 people to 100 people in reservations, and we had no wine list. Well, I thought we had a wine list. We had, I would say, what kind of wines do you have? The people would ask. I said, well, we got the top 3. We got red, we got white, we got rosé. What more do you want? And then a frustrated New York guy gave me a book one time, a little signet book of wine. Said, here, read this. Boom, that did it.
And that was your education?
Yeah, I'm self-taught. There was nothing like, the wine was nothing like it is today. There were no schools to go to wine, to learn wine. I had to learn it all on my own. And I lived in the Hudson Valley, living there, going to college, as well as this restaurant. And actually, this is for New York. This is very, very important, that the oldest winery in the United States of America is located in Washingtonville, New York. It's called Brotherhood. That's the oldest winery in the United States. The oldest vineyard in the United States is in Marlborough, in New York. It's called Ben Marl. This is actually, one person called this the birthplace of American viticulture. So, wow, I'm into it. I'm in all the way. Just give it to me. And it's just, I was a history major at the beginning, and my God, there's so much history involved in wine.
So you read that book, and you're already evincing a passion for this, and you just, blossomed into...
I was in from that moment on, and the owner and the chef, John Novi, he just said, put together a wine list. We can't do red, white, and rosé anymore. And I still have the wine list, and there's slate, and I painted it. It's in my wine cellar, painted. We're talking about 1970. Here's a bottle of wine now that sells for, in a restaurant for $5,000, and I have it on the wine list for $15. Those are the old days. I should have brought those with me. And so I had a place to buy wine and taste wine and study wine. And I stayed at that restaurant for 6 years before I went to Windows on the World. I actually was at Windows on the World before they opened in 1976.
Did you do the wine list there?
Yeah, and this is a fascinating thing because, like John Novi said to me, you do the wine list. Joe Baum, again, my mentor.
Legendary
Joe Baum, who created the Four Seasons restaurant, Windows on the World, left Windows on the World, and recreated the Rainbow Room. Came back after the bombing at the World Trade Center. A lot of people forget that. That was 93. And we were closed for 3 years, and then Joe Baum came back in 96 and brought it back to glory. And it was in its glory in September of 2001. But Joe Baum said to me back in the early days, and I just turned 25, he said, verbatim, I want you to create the biggest and the best wine list that New York has ever seen, ... And don't worry about how much it costs.
Wow.
I was a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, of course.
And I'd already done my 10,000 hours. This is really important because everybody associates me with Windows in the World. But prior to that, I had gone to every winery in New York State, the 6 of them. Then I hitchhiked to California because I had no money. I was still in college, and I hitchhiked, and there's 1,200 wineries now in the North Coast. And I visited the 12 because that's all there was. So since then. And then after college, boom, off to Europe. So by the time I got to Windows in the World, I had already been to every major wine region on earth. And this is not a silver spoon situation. This is youth hostels. This is Urel Pass. This is hitchhiking the hard way. And so, and my hair was much longer than it is now. So they didn't know how to deal with me.
What I'm wondering, Kevin, is was the nose and the palate just something inborn in you, or did you develop it, or?
Very good question, because it is a matter of olfactory and smelling something and being able to identify whether it's good or not, and is it worth the price.
That smell is what, 80% of taste?
90% of taste is smell.
How did you know how to do that?
I didn't.
I learned how to do it.
I learned from the masters. I was a very lucky guy because I was this young kid. Alexis Besploff was the New York Magazine wine writer at the time. He took me in. Sam Aaron of Sherry Lehman, Michael Aaron of Sherry Lehman, he brought me into tastings, and I learned from them. I guess they wanted another voice, and hey, come to a wine tasting. I said, okay, I'll come to your wine tasting. Right. And that's after, I say 10,000 hours, 10,000 wines. It takes time to, and I'm not going to sit here and say, if you gave me this wine and that wine, could I identify them? Some people have a photographic memory, and I think there are people that could do that in the old days. I don't think they could do it today because it's just too much wine around.
What's important in that regard? That's a good point. It's not about being able to distinguish, appreciating good wine.
Right.
Or knowing the difference between good wine and mediocre wine. It's not about being able to say, oh, that's a 1947 and this is a 48. It's about what? It's about the tannins, a combination of tannins, aroma, the taste.
Aroma. And again, aroma's young wine. Bouquet is a wine that's 10 years older. It's blossomed into all of these other things where oak fits in and tannins have dropped out. But mostly, and this is something that people don't get, they always think about this wine and aging and stuff like that. 90% of all wines made in the world today are meant to be consumed within 1 year. 1 year.
Really?
Yeah. 1 year. Think about all the jug wines that are out there. Are you putting them away? For the 50th anniversary of Woodstock, do you still have some 1969 jug wine that you're going to bring to Woodstock? Another 9% of wines should never see more than 5 years. Bottom line, only 1% of all wines will age over 5 years.
So you're saying that, going back there when I opened it, I'm in a restaurant, the fact that the 2010
right.
Pinot Noir is on the menu at $100, but the 2015
right.
is only $50. The 2010 may not be worth the extra $50.
I totally agree. And you said you like Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir, I can judge you a little bit, or not judge you. I can be your
you can judge me.
Wine therapist, Tony. Okay?
I need a wine
I'm your
therapist.
Wine therapist. Pinot Noir is a light style wine. And I will say this right now, and I love Pinot Noir. It's from Burgundy, France. It's from Oregon. It's from California. And it's an expensive grape to make. Anybody who makes Pinot Noir and grows Pinot Noir has a passion for wine. And the thing is, though, after 5 years, Pinot Noir is sketchy in a way. It doesn't last like a Cabernet Sauvignon does. That's a bold, big, full-bodied, tannic wine that's going to last for 20 years. Pinot Noir, I'd say 95% of all Pinot Noirs should be consumed within 5 years.
As long as we're getting specific like that, maybe we can help our audience a little bit with some of your philosophy is keep it simple.
Right.
You know, in terms of choosing wine, whether going to a store to buy it or in a restaurant, keep it simple. How should they go about it if they don't have a rich education in wine?
I spend 60 hours plus studying
Teaching
wine.
this.
Well, I teach it as well, and that's you still, as your teacher, you're always the student. But so I'm going to go way back to when I even started. There's 6 grapes that you need to know. If you're a white wine drinker, Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay. That's all you need to know. I could throw Pinot Grigio in there if I had to, but that's a new grape in a way. It's not a new grape, but it's a new for people. Years ago, you didn't talk about Pinot Grigio. Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, and Chardonnay, and we don't have time right now. I don't have the wines. So if I put a glass of skim milk and a glass of whole milk and a glass of heavy cream in front of you right now, would you be able to see the difference in the lightness or the heaviness? Probably.
Yeah.
From heavy cream to skim milk, it's going to be very, very light and diluted. The smell, I'm not sure. But would you feel the difference in texture between skim milk, whole milk, and heavy cream?
I think I would, but
Well, you would. Trust me. I didn't bring the milk today, but trust me. Riesling around the world is skim milk. Sauvignon Blanc is whole milk, and Chardonnay is heavy cream. And you say you love restaurants, and that's where I met you and I partied with you. And I look at it this way: people love to cook, and is fish. Let's take fish. Stover sole is light. Salmon is heavy. And you want to take a look at, that's how I pair my wines together with the white wines. I'll just do real quickly the red wines and then we'll move on. But Pinot Noir, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. Those 3 are the major 3 red grapes in the world. Pinot Noir around the world is skim milk. Merlot is whole milk.
I hate skim milk, but I love Pinot Noir.
But great Pinot Noirs are just
No, I understand
unbelievable.
your metaphor.
Cabernet is the big one.
Yeah. I should tell the audience we're really concentrating on red wine today because we're talking about Kevin's latest book, which is Red Wine, 50 Varieties. Let's take Pinot Noir for a minute. Just this country. You know, California and different areas of California, the Willamette Valley in Oregon, you know, the Sonoma Coast, California, the Carneros region of California, the Russian River Valley of California. When I go to a restaurant and the Russian River Valley one is more expensive than the one from Sonoma Coast, which I know is a big, broad area, does that tell me anything, or it's just, again, going back to what you like and picking that?
Yeah, the funny thing is this didn't exist 40 years ago. All of these places, they might have existed, but never would you see them on a label. Basically, people will remember the following. Chablis, right?
Yeah.
They thought that Chablis in the jug, the Chablis or the Hardy Burgundy, that's what people...
I used to drink Gallo Hardy Burgundy. It was I thought a pretty good one.
It was the largest selling red wine, still is the largest selling red wine sold in the United States of America, if you start thinking about it. And the Paul Masons. Remember those?
Yeah, sure.
Who was it? Did a whole thing. We will sell no wine.
The wine before its time.
Before its time, or Almaden. All of these wines that were there. So let's go back to your question. Today, it's where you're identifying. They're getting more inside the circle. So it used to be just U.S. of A. Then it's California. Then it's North Coast. Then it's Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Lake. Then it's Russian River, which is inside Sonoma. There's, I can do Oakville inside of Napa. It's fascinating to watch it. I feel like a witness to the revolution, if you will, when it comes to wine. So the more you get inside the circle, the better the wine's going to be. So if it says Sonoma, I'd rather have and this is a generalization, I'd rather have a Russian River, which is inside Sonoma. And I'd also like to have a particular vineyard. If I'm going all the way, I want the best of the best. The vineyard most likely will be on the label. And of course the wineries that are dedicated to producing Pinot Noir, they're usually dedicated to producing Chardonnay as well, because that's what Burgundy, France is all about. The red wines of Burgundy, 100% Pinot Noir. The white wines of Burgundy are 100% Chardonnay.
Just to go in this circle a bit, one of the bigger circles, as you know, is this Sonoma Coast. Now, It took me a while to find out. I said to my wine merchant, I want Sonoma Coast. And he finally told me one day, well, you know, Sonoma Coast is like as big as Nevada. I mean, it just goes from, you know, it's many, many miles and many, many vineyards.
Right.
And then I said, you know, so do I want one from the western part of the Sonoma Coast or the northern part? You know, it's...
Buy by the name of the producer. That's the best thing I can say to you. And I mean, there's so many publications that are out there right now. You know, the Wine Spectator, the Wine Enthusiast, the Wine Advocate. And by the way, your best friend and anybody who's buying wine's best friend is called winesearcher.com. Okay? I can find, right now, I'll put a Pinot Noir in there and I'll find that Pinot Noir, what it costs everywhere in the world, live.
Winesearcher.com.
And you can find out if you're spending too much at a retail store in Queens versus Brooklyn versus Manhattan, the same wine, you shop at a different place.
Yeah. Do you grow wine?
I have failed.
I mean, grow grapes.
I have failed several times. I'm on my 6th time right now.
Really?
But I did I planted grapes. People would know Mohonk Mountain House in New Paltz, New York.
Sure.
And I got them to get, they have 6,000 acres, so I said, could you give me a little parcel? So when I was in college, they gave me the parcel of land. Don't ask me why they did it. Cornell gave me the grapes, Cornell Extension, the agricultural extension gave me the grapes as an experimental thing, but they died. And that's something you learn about wine. You know, you can't grow grapes anywhere. So they're identifying Sonoma Coast, or they're identifying Napa, or they're saying Monterey, or they're saying the Finger Lakes. Where in the Hudson Valley? Or Long Island, which has done unbelievable. Look at
the North Fork.
It didn't exist when I started. You know, we're talking about '73. The first winery was Hargrave. Alex and Louisa Hargrave went out there in Potato Field and put in a vineyard. And anybody who knows is from New York and has gone out to Long Island and see what the North Fork is all about. It's amazing. And when I think of the Finger Lakes, I think of white grapes because of the temperature. The Hudson Valley is sort of a mixture. You know, you can grow by the way, Pinot Noir needs a cool climate. Let me come back to that. So that's where Carneros is. That's where Sonoma Coast is. But in Long Island, I got much longer growing season. So I can put in grapes like Cabernet Franc, which is the grape variety it's either Cabernet Franc or Merlot. It depends on who you're talking to. Their best grape out there.
When you say, buy by the producer, I go back to an experience I had in wine country in the Napa Valley. I was at a restaurant there, Auberge de Soleil, wonderful, wonderful place.
Not just a little restaurant.
Yeah, that's one of the world great. And ordered a Pinot Noir with the meal, and I said, you pick one, and they came to, and this thing tasted magnificent. And it turned out it was a producer, or whatever you call it, vineyard called Pat's and Hall.
Right. And
I said, wow. So the next day I go to Pat's. They said, oh, it's right down the block. You can buy. I go there and I buy a case. Well, I mean, to make this to get to the point, I didn't know that Pat's and Hall has whatever that Pinot Noir was, but they have other, they have even better.
Lots.
They have some with only one, the grapes come from one vineyard.
Right.
Whatever the one was that I had, I thought was terrific. But then I get confused later on when I find out, oh, gee, they have gradations. And I thought, well, I will never, I guess, just stick with the one you know.
Wine is a very confusing subject. I mean, I just think of stores here in New York City that have 6,000 wines, 8,000 wines when you walk in. How would you figure that out? And again, they're not studying wine like I am. I'm telling you right now that I'm confused. Because when I went to Windows on the World, when I started at the Canal House, it was French wines. That's it.
Yeah.
Solamente, French wines, maybe German whites. Okay, if you remember Liebfraumilch, like Blue Nun, or Zeller Schwarzekatz, the black cat of Zell. But that was it. I mean, California wasn't discussed, neither was any place else. What's happened over the last 40 years? Well, France is still making great wines. Italy, by the way, in that time was making terrible wines. Terrible wines. Riuniti, remember Riuniti?
Oh, sure.
And that was the big Italian wine, Riuniti on ice. That's nice. But all that money, it's very interesting because there's a New York family called the Mariani family out of Old Brookville, Long Island. And they brought in the Riuniti. And so all that Riuniti that you bought, that Lambrusco, they put back into Tuscany. They're one of the largest landholders in Tuscany under the name Banfi. Brunello
of
di
course.
Montalcino.
Yeah,
all
Brunello di Montalcino.
that's one of their great wines. But back to what's happened over the last 40 years is all of a sudden California. I remember being at Windows in the World. We started with French wines, and then maybe we started that in '76. Maybe by 1980, I was selling more California wines than I was French wines. And then California took off. But so did Argentina. So did Chile.
Yeah.
So did South Africa. So did
Australia.
Australia, and look at New Zealand.
New Zealand.
By the way, going back to that light, medium, and full, the New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs are on the light style. Pinot Grigio is also skim milk. And I say that because it doesn't have any oak. It's just nice and easy to drink, and a good wine for a good price.
You mentioned oak, and leads to the question of should I care as a consumer whether the wine was aged in oak or in stainless steel?
Depends on your style. I mean, again, the lighter style wines are not going to have, Pinot Grigio is not going to have oak. Most Sauvignon Blancs, like 90%, are never going to see oak. So they're refreshing. Riesling, if they see oak, it's going to be a big oak, which doesn't do anything. It's just a storage tank. So if you want to get the essence of fruit, then you don't really, I mean, see, oak brings with it a new taste. It's a totally different taste. And Chardonnay can handle oak. Sauvignon Blanc doesn't do well with oak. Pinot Noir, be careful. All right, don't put too much oak in there. And it's not just oak, it's how old the barrels are. Are they new oak? Are they older oak? Is a small oak? Is it a big oak? Is it from France? Is it from another country where the oak is grown? That's a study in itself.
Yeah.
Is it, when they're doing it, is it they call it, they put a fire underneath it? Is it low toast, medium toast, or high toast? The fire, when they're building this, you got to see a cooper do it. It's amazing.
You know what? If you need, I mean, this man knows it all, as you can tell, and I can already tell we don't have enough time to cover this subject. So where can folks find you? They can find you at Sherry Lehman, right? With
I've been associated with Sherry Lehman since I was 19 years old. I used to go into the store and look at the wines that I couldn't buy. I couldn't afford them.
Now you have a wine club there.
I have a wine club there.
And master classes.
I have master classes and also advanced wine classes. And don't get the term advanced. I started still. I hope everybody's getting. I break things down quickly, and then we go into the great wines. An advanced wine class and master class are great wines. And the book, The Windows on the World, is thank God. We're in our 32nd edition, and the next edition will come out next year.
The Windows on the World wine course is
it's called Complete Wine Course. It's still not complete yet, but let's not tell anybody that.
Right.
The red wine book is fascinating if you're into red wine because it does.
This is what, the 17th?
No, the red wine, the 32nd edition of the Windows.
Right.
This is actually, the red wine book just came out, brand new, and I wrote it with a couple of friends of mine, which is my style right now. I'm going to write with writers that I respect, and Mike and Jeff, who are my co-writers on that book, did a tremendous amount of work on getting it there, and we suggest wines. What's for Pinot Noir? From what country? We suggest what's the inexpensive, what's the splurge, what's the,
I saw that.
Right.
And I didn't recognize any of those
1,000 different wines.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to ask you this. In your book, you mentioned, it's 50 varieties of grapes in the red wine book, and you mentioned two, Mavrud and Plava Mali.
Right.
Never heard of them, and obviously most folks probably haven't. Can you give me a thumbnail of what they are?
Let me just explain. There's a lot more other grapes that you never heard of.
Oh, I'm sure.
Remember, if I broke it down, you have Pinot Noir, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. I didn't even mention things like Syrah and Grenache, and I can go on to Mourvedre. I could go on to all these different grapes. That would be, these are grapes that you're going to have to look for, but they're interesting grapes, and they're up-and-coming grapes. And yes, you're correct. And I don't even know who even carries them. That was the difficulty in finding them.
That's one of the difficulties I have with the wine columns in like the New York Times. They have a tasting. This is the best. This is the best. You can never find those wines.
I agree. It is difficult. And what I do with the Windows book, everything that's in my Windows in the World book, you can find. So I make that. It's easy. And there's over 500 different selections in the back of my book. Under $30, by the way. You don't have to spend a lot of money anymore to have a good bottle of wine. That's really, really important.
Quick answer. What's the usual markup of wine in a restaurant?
There is no science to it at all. I've been doing it since I was 20 years old, and some restaurant can mark it up, double it, triple it, quadruple it. I suggest strong, and I've been going to a lot of restaurants lately in New York. Don't get carried away. Don't spend more than $75 for a bottle of wine. That's high. If you can find, I'm talking about even great restaurants. don't experiment in restaurants. And I'm in the restaurant business. I wouldn't say you're crazy to do
Right.
it. Somebody's making too much money, buy it in a retail store and have it at home with your friends.
We have about 3 minutes left. I want to go quickly to another passion of yours, which is music, and the 50th anniversary of Woodstock coming up. And you got plans. Tell me.
Well, I went to that festival.
Sure.
If it wasn't for that festival, I would have never gotten to the Ulster County, where I live right now. That's right after that in '69. I went to college there, and so I have a passion for music. I'm a frustrated musician. If you come to my house, my drums, my guitar, my piano, all my kids do the same thing. Never getting anywhere with it. I'm never going to write a hit song, but it did something for me. So it's a give back, and it's not like what I'm producing is going to be the 450,000 people at one weekend. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I hope not.
It's a whole year celebration, because Woodstock, New York, it's not where it happened, by the way. It happened in Sullivan County.
Right.
This is for Ulster County. Woodstock, New York is in Ulster County, and it's art. It's not about just, it's about art, and the artists of Woodstock. It's about music. It's about peace. Mohonk, I'm bringing it up again, Mohonk Mountain House is where, if you will, the peace conferences were before there was the United Nations. So we have a lot of history in that area, and it's going to be a whole year-long celebration.
And it has a name yet, or no?
Maybe by next time I see you, I'll have an official name.
When you do, I want to see you again. So
Okay.
we can talk more about that and more about wine. And my last, I don't know, I'm always at a loss in a restaurant when I order a bottle of wine, they open it, they pull out the cork, they hand it to me.
Right.
And what am I supposed to do with that?
Sure this is a good
Apparently
cork.
I'm supposed to smell it, and apparently I'm supposed to know all kinds of things from smelling the cork. I never know what to do.
Well, I just want you to know on here it says Big Table Farm, so I don't know what kind of wines you've been drinking lately. Bottom line is, yes, it's tradition, especially I learned the French way. You pull it out, you hand the cork to the person, and then what is the person supposed to do? What do you see them do? What do?
Well, everybody sniffs it.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
right.
great.
They
This
go like this, as if that tells them something.
Right. Yeah. Well, what does it smell like? It smells like a wet, winey, smelly cork. So now, this has been a long time. We've known each other. I'm going to make this statement, a very bold statement, but I'm right, I think, is that the cork means nothing. It never did, and it never will. And so what you can do with the cork is play with it. You can, if you eat it, whatever, or just hit the person behind you and not knowing what's going on. The cork, just, if you already opened the bottle, put some wine in the glass, smell it. And if it's, what are you smelling? You're trying to make sure it's not oxidized, or it's not, the cork itself is not corked.
Right.
And then again, the big question I say to you, Tony, is what do you do when they give you the screw cap? What are you going to do then? When
Yeah.
the screw cap comes off,
I smell that. And
Don't
say,
worry about it.
Oh, it's good aluminum.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's really
spent a lot of money
great
on it.
year, that aluminum.
Right.
Kevin Zraly, you're a delight. I do want to have you back here, and you know what we should do? We're going to have, they tell me they're going to fix up this studio for all the shows here, and maybe we should the next time we should get a table, have a feast, have wine, and just kind of make the audience drool while we eat and drink.
Maybe we'll tell them what we're drinking, and they can buy it at home and drink with us.
Okay.
See how that works.
Kevin Zraly, a delight to have
Thank you,
with
Tony.
us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. We will see you next time.